to celebrate and mark the World Mental Health Day today. And I have a great pleasure to be moderating this particular webinar, focusing on mental health in the school context for educators. And I hope that everyone is excited to be part of this. Firstly, I would like to acknowledge our funders and actually the hosts of this webinar, Z Zurich Foundation and JA Africa. Thank you so much for your generosity and allowing us the opportunity to engage. Today we have a great panel, and I'm so excited to introduce the panel. Firstly, I will ask Dr. Memuna Williams, who I will introduce now. She will say a few things, but Dr. Memuna is the head of the Social Equity Program. She is heading this program within JA Africa, and it's an exciting opportunity to work with lots of young people across many countries. And I'm sure she will say a few words about that, and then I will introduce other members of our panel. Thank you so much, Dr. Memuna Williams. You're welcome. Dr. Memuna, you're muted, I think. Yeah.
Thank you for that warm welcome, Dr. Rita, and welcome everyone on this World Mental Health Day. It's my pleasure to welcome you to this discussion on mental well-being in that context. And as Dr. Rita has said, it's a privilege at JA Africa for us to be engaged in this work, which, as we were reminded by our multiple award-winning CEO, Simi Wogugu, last time we did a program like this, that social emotional skills building is something that Junior Achievement has always done as part of its programming, and is something that we're excited to be doing in our uniquely African context as we go forward. So a warm welcome to everyone. We have an amazing panel and an amazing program for you, and we look forward to engaging with you on it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Williams. And just reminded me that I actually needed to introduce myself as well. My name is Dr. Rita Sonko. I am from Strategic Analytics and Management. We are a partner to JA Africa and Z Zurich Foundation, and currently involved in the Social Equity Program, and working to make sure that we test out different approaches to improve mental well-being of our youth. So excited to be hosting this webinar. And like Dr. Memuna said, there is a lot to talk about today. And I just want to briefly introduce our speakers. We have, just in brief, and I'll have a more detailed introduction of them as they speak. So we have Miss Tembi Mkwanazi Dube and Miss Kate Otto, both of them from the Oprah Winfrey Leadership Academy for Girls. They will be our main speakers today with a lot of insights and great background in mental health in their work at OLAG, and a lot to share with us today. We will be going in a little bit more details as we speak to them, and we have an exciting set of stories to discuss to guide this webinar. So to get us started, I would like to ask the team to play a video, a small video, just to give everyone a background on mental health, on mental well-being, and you know, what we are talking about here. Thank you. Team.
What if we were asking ourselves, how am I feeling today? Mental well-being is the foundation to all achievements in life. However, poor mental well-being often remains a taboo and invisible to everyone's eyes. Everyday stress can lead to anxiety, damage self-esteem, decrease ability to learn and communicate needs, and ultimately lead to lose the purpose for life. Mental well-being has already been identified as a global crisis, and the COVID-19 pandemic has only intensified the problem. The Z Zurich Foundation believes that every individual in the world should be given the opportunities and tools to express their feeling, live a healthy life, and be empowered to search for necessary support. We are co-creating a global movement, connecting youth, caregivers, mental well-being experts, government, and academia to live life to the fullest, reversing the spiral of anxiety and saving lives. Time to act is now. At the Z Zurich Foundation, our focus is on the prevention, stigma reduction, and promotion of mental well-being among young people wherever they are in the world. We believe it is our shared responsibility to equip young people with the emotional education they need to thrive. Together with partners and allies, we work with schools to include mental well-being as part of the core curriculum. We engage with sport clubs to equate physical abilities with emotional strength. We create campaigns to reach youth and caregivers globally with key messaging via digital platforms. From individuals becoming aware of their feelings, to those bravely breaking their silence, to those actors willing to stand and change systems, we are helping to bring out the best in one another and empower to speak up and act. You can be part of this too. What if we were asking ourselves, how am I feeling today? Mental
that we are dealing with, and I hope that in this webinar we'll be able to touch on a lot of these issues that we're going to speak about specifically. So up next, I would like to introduce Ms. Tendi Mkwanazi Dube in a little bit more details. She is transitioning from the Dean of Students at OLAG. This is the Oprah Winfrey Leadership Academy for Girls. She's been an executive there for many years and a site coordinator for Neurosequential Model at the school. And she has an extensive range of qualifications and experiences. Recently has a master's in entrepreneurship and new venture management, new venture creation from University of Leeds. And she has a background in social work and psychology. Ms. Tembi is going to discuss a little bit more details around this issue that we're talking about today. And over to you, Tembi, for the keynote. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sonko. Good afternoon, good morning, good day to everyone across the world. I'd like the team to project the slides. I'm greatly honored to be joining this team from Air Africa as well as Z Zurich in terms of the global pandemic around mental health issues that are on the scourge at the moment, especially after COVID. Thank you. We can move to the next slide. My name is Tembi, as I've been introduced. And I've been at OLEG for over 16 years with Kate, who's on the line. It is exciting to be here. So I'm going to speed us up because I'm mindful of also time. So when we speak about mental wellness and mental health issues, it is important to start by just defining what health is, which is a complete physical, mental, as well as social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease. This is defined by WHO. So it has 4 pillars that encompass what we call a human wellness and health and wellness, which is physical, mental, environment, as well as socio-economic health. So it is important for us to look at that in that way. Then this leads to 11 dimensions of a human being. We can move the slide, please. The 11 dimensions are quite vast. They're medical, we've got intellectual, we've got sexual, but the major one we are focusing on today is mental health. It is important for us to then venture into what is mental health wellness, or what is mental functioning, and what is mental illness a little bit, and how do we manage and cope as teachers, as students, as parents, as professionals. It is important for us to look at that. When we speak about mental health, it is important for us to remember that we can't speak about health issues, mental health issues, without looking at the mind, looking at the brain, because that's what it is. That's why it is called mental health. So when we speak about mental health and well-being, we're speaking about the functioning of the brain, which leads to the functioning of the whole body. Next slide, please. Thank you. So I've just touched on what is health. And now looking at the brain is the engine, is one of the organs that allow us as human beings to function. Whether you're a teacher trying to teach, you're trying to shift and change the brain. And whether you are a counselor in a school, you're trying to change the brain. If you are a learner and a student, you're trying to use your brain to learn. So this is a very core engine of who we are as human beings, in terms of our mental health and wellness as well. I'm not going to go into the biology of the spinal cord, frontal lobe, and so on. I'll move just right along in terms of how do we then become healthy in looking after our mental health and well-being. The next slide, please. Thank you. So when we think about the brain in terms of mental wellness, is that the brain develops before birth. And then it develops from bottom up, from the brainstem to the cortex. And all these areas develop from birth till about when you're 5, 6, and there's a booming development there. But all these functions develop as we engage with one another. But also in this development, we know that the development is sequential, meaning it develops from the brainstem up until the cortex as you grow. And it also functions sequentially, meaning that any incoming information in your mind, as a human being, it comes through your brainstem process, gets processed, and the functions get interpreted until to the wiser brain. Next slide, please. And these are the slides we get from our neuroscientist as well as the psychiatrist who works on mental health issues, Dr. Bruce Perry. And one of them, or two of them also, are from him. So if you look at this pyramid, which is really a summary of the brain functions, it speaks about the lower parts of the brain, starting with where it is created to act before you think and process and feel. So when you see something as a teacher, whether a learner is misbehaving, whether you worried yourself something is happening, you act first before you feel and before you think. So this is the sequential that we're talking about in processing information. So when you have been hampered or you've gone through a challenge, whether it's stress and so on, it disturbs and it disrupts this functioning of the brain. Therefore, this may lead to certain challenges around mental health. It's important for us to remember, if you take away anything today, take away that your brain functions through just the really bottom up, and it acts first before. It's a survival part of the brain before you feel. We can sort it again. It tells you that the bottom parts of the brain deals with actually things like attention. So students need to pay attention in class. They need to interact. So when you calm, this lower part of the brain functions very well with signals of incoming information from your senses. And then it moves to the information up to the brain through the feeling parts, which is the limbic and so on, and then to the thinking part. So you're able to access those if you are well balanced. Right now, seated, if you are grieving, for example, or if you are stressed, very stressed, you will hear parts of my presentation with the team and miss some parts of it because the upper part of the brain, the cortex, is not functioning at its highest functioning because there is challenges with stress levels and your mental well-being. We can move to the next. I'm not going to go deeper into these slides. I'm mindful of time. Then what is mental health as it is? Is it depression? Is it mental illness? What is it? Is it stress? What is it? We can move to the next slide. So mental health itself, we're talking about a state of well-being, which an individual realizes his or own abilities to cope with normal stresses of life. It also speaks about how productive and fruitful you are in life. And it also speaks and looks at how you make contributions to your community. This includes productivity in activities. If you're a teacher, how productive are you in class? How productive are you and creative are you in your educational setting? And the relationships you have, are they positive? How are they? So if they're not, you need to be starting to think about, do I need to pay attention to my mental well-being? Also, when we speak about mental health, we're speaking about the abilities to adapt to change and cope. For example, new students in your environment, how are they adjusting? So if they're struggling with their mental well-being, some may have prolonged struggles to cope with new environments. You yourself might struggle to even be in class and be attentive and teach and engage and relate positively. And so it's important that we understand that mental health matters. That's the other takeaway. It matters. We heard from Dr. Williams that it is, even from the video, that it is a global crisis. It is everywhere in the country, especially after the scare and the death and dying of COVID. In schools, we feel it. We see it even at OLEG as well. Please, next slide. And then we move to, because when you speak about mental health, many people think that mental health is also mental illness. But mental illness is a different kind of state. Mental illness is any disorder or disorders that cause a person to experience difficulties, whether in behavior, how they normally function. Sometimes you experience altered mood and patterns of thinking and functioning as well. Mental disorders also can vary from mild to severe. And so it is important to pick it up very early on as a teacher with your student. Early on that my student is struggling here, something might be going on. Because later on it could be life-threatening and even disabling, causing a person not to function at all. Next slide. So mental illnesses range, and mental illnesses are condition that causes one to have altered thinking, to have altered views, and to have a very busy mind sometimes, or disengaged mind. Sometimes you struggle to sleep, sometimes you have low energy, sometimes you have high energy that's uncontainable. We can carry on and list symptoms. We'll see that now. Please, next slide. Let's move together. Thank you. Yeah, so just in summary, your general state of well-being and the state of mind is something that should be looked after. That's mental health. All of us should really maintain and try and work so hard to maintain our mental health. Whereas mental illness is something that disrupts your mental state, as we spoke briefly about your mind, how your mind, your brain is the core in the mental health issues. And if you're not looking after it, it means that you're struggling with some mental illness in how you feel, think, and communicate and behave. So it is important that you do that. You work on that. Thank you. Next slide. So mental health facets, there are 4 corners to mental wellness. It's emotional well-being, spiritual well-being, and functioning psychological well-being, as well as social well-being. We know that understanding these 4 pillars into your mental well-being and how it affects how you feel, how you think and act, it also helps to determine how you manage and regulate your stress. We know in education environment, I've been in school for, in an educational setting for 16 years. and it can be challenging. It's a pressured environment around teaching and learning. It's deadlines after deadlines. So when you look after these 4 pillars, you're able to function better as well. And very on in life, from childhood, you need to be starting as a teenager seated here, and as a scholar seated here, you need to be starting to look after, be intentional and relentless about how you look after your mental well-being. Thank you. Next slide. So possible causes of mental health and mental illnesses vary. These causes could range from, we can move, from biological factors such as genetics, really around genetics, things that you're born with, brain chemistry, substance abuse, and life experiences could range from childhood trauma, for example, or current traumas that you're going through. If you've got that, seek help. Day-to-day challenges, unresolved issues that pile up, even passive nature, things that are not really out there, but as long as they are life experiences that impact you, those could contribute. Poor coping strategies or mechanism, negative outlook to life, and no support systems. Dr. Perry also speaks about how human beings are not an island, how we need to relate all the time and connect. So if you're feeling isolated and alone, this can contribute to mental health challenges in a very big way. You need to get help if this is what you're sitting with as a young person or as a teacher. We can move to the next slide where we're looking at symptoms of mental illnesses. It's very helpful for us to start with the symptoms first before we can say these are the mental illnesses, because they come with stigma in our communities. Some of the symptoms that you might look at, please don't tick 1 or 2 and like, oh my God, I've got mental illness. These are part of life. If it's not too severe, try and check yourself and get help if you need to. So for sometimes you feel anxious in a prolonged way, feeling depressed in a dark place. We know when we speak about depression, feeling like you're stuck and you're feeling in a dark place, you needing not to talk to anyone, or you're all alone in the world. Sleep problems, too much or too little, emotional outbursts, weight and appetite changes. Could be high appetite that is uncontrolled, or very low appetite, quiet or withdrawn demeanor or affect, substance abuse, suicidal thoughts. Please continue. As we continue with this, we will move to then other early signs to take note of these changes. There's more signs and symptoms. Clearly, as you study yourself, that this I'm not feeling like myself. You need to check that out. It could mean that something going on, or as a student, problems, too much or too little, pulling away from people. I've touched on this. How low, having a low energy or high energy, feeling numb, like you have no interest in things of life. You suddenly don't like math, or you suddenly don't like teaching and showing up in staff meetings and so on. As a teacher, check that out and seek help. Having unexplained or unexplainable aches and pains, feeling helpless and hopeless, drugs and smoking and drinking more than usual. These are as early signs of you noticing that something is going wrong. So you seek help, and you make sure that you get help. Yes, please, let's move along. Thank you. We're almost there, everyone. I hope this is helpful. Yeah, if you were live, I would say click and say like if it's helping you, but maybe do that on wherever you are on one of the systems that we have. So feeling unusual, confused, forgetful, I see that. I see the hearts. Very encouraging. Forgetful, on the edge, angry, upset, worried, yelling and fighting with family. We see you. Experiencing severe mood swings, and these cause problems in relationships when you suddenly your best buddies or best friend as an adult, you feel like they're annoying you, they out of nowhere. Get worried a little bit. Check yourself out. Do things that will help you to go back on the functioning wagon and so on. Having persistent thoughts, memories that you can get out of your head. hearing voices, for example, and maybe talking to those voices, feeling like you're engaging in those, thinking of harming yourself or others, that's a big, big red flag. I would say in most schools, we see this around suicidality and so on, inability to perform daily tasks. You usually are a clean, washing person, you titivate yourself, you look good when you go to school or when you go to teach. Suddenly you can't do that. Suddenly your student, as a teacher, comes dirty. They come ungroomed at all. You need to be asking yourself or engage the student and say, I see, Tembi, you've shifted a bit. Tell me about what's happening in your life. Please, let's move on. I know I'm taking a bit of time, so now I'm about to wrap up. And now we go to the core summaries of these mental illnesses. It's just mentioning but a few. If you think about depression, I spoke about how you feel in a dark place, you feel withdrawn in a prolonged way. There are issues like bipolar. Other stress disorders are stress syndrome, anxiety, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and other illnesses are schizophrenia, psychosis, attention deficit hyperactivity, which is popularly known as ADHD, and then the obsessive compulsive disorder. These are part of mental illnesses that you can think of. There's many more. I'm not saying to young people out there, or even teachers, go Google it and diagnose yourself, and like, you feel when your system is not functioning well, or when other people are giving you that feedback, check yourself out and get some help. Here is how. Let's move along. Again, if you're hearing me, just show me by a hand, sharp, a heart. Yeah, ways to maintain a positive mental health. Let's move forward on that. I see you. We are together. We can move along. So mental wellness management is so important. So for biological factors, things that sometimes you're born with and you can't seem to shake it off, these might need you to seek professional help. We've got here our clinical psychologists. They specialize in some of these, psychiatrists and so on. And taking treatment as prescribed is important as well. So if you are a scholar or you are a staff member, make sure you take your medication. This is very important. Avoid any aggravating circumstances or substances. It is like really taking substances and like alcohol, drugs, and so on. Life experiences like adjusting and getting to know and maintain friendships for teenagers. It could be maintaining relationships with your partner, wives, husband, and so on, or with the principal, if you're a principal, with staff. Seek counseling and be proactive. Get counseling before it is severe, before it is really out of hand. Be assertive, not passive or aggressive. I added there a few scriptures. If you are a believer and you're a really professional person who says, I meditate and I'm a spiritual person, you then can use these, such as going to church and going to where your spiritual belief leads you. Build positive outlook in life to manage stress and cope. Belong to a community of faith. Some belong to, they believe certain beliefs. If you belong to those spirituality things, do those, go to those and manage those and engage in those. Then you will cope better. You will manage yourself better. This I can't stress enough. Take time out to rest. Because a lot of us in schools don't rest. You'll find you're in a class of 30, class of students with 40 students, and you have to give of yourself. But if you don't give and don't fill up your cup, certainly you will struggle with emotions and stress and so on. Physical exercise, I love my own that Kate will talk about. I love running, I love walking, I love spirituality, I love meditation. Those things you don't need to pay money for. Walk outside, find time, help others also, and feel good about it. So giving is also part of really your managing your mental wellness. There's many more. You can type, if you are on YouTube, you can type those as well, add to the conversation. You can do a thumbs up and say, I do this and I do that. If you can do that, we can move to the next slide. So as we wrap up, in many countries, I know we have so many countries. We've got maybe 10 to 15, I don't know how many countries are online. Please know that in your hometowns, I see you, I see you, I see them, pom-poms. There are helplines that you can just Google, helpline for either anxiety or depression, bipolar. There's sometimes support groups. Even within the school, as in schools, teachers create those support groups, empower learners to support each other, and empower each other as teachers to support. So support groups are very useful. If you're a mom and you're a teacher, support group for moms or for fathers or for principals. In our country and many other countries, I know that there is suicide crisis helpline and mental health helplines as well. But there's many, many more. If you go on WHO and check even in your countries, you'll find things that you'll be amazed, and you get that help that you need. As we go to the last slide, you can do the thumbs up. I see that you're engaging. I see, and I'm grateful for that, because learning this will transform your life as well. It will lead to, so in our country, you'll find things like Stigma mental health. They will be having numbers for WhatsApp. So in your country, maybe you've got that. Maybe line Brave Together, Kimoja substances. You find these numbers where there's WhatsApp. These days, technology helps us to reach out as well. Don't stay and drown in your corner alone, especially if you are listening today. Let you start shifting your mental health and functioning, your mental well-being as well. Last slide. I want to say one statement as we wrap up. So I want to say, when you've broken a leg, you go to the doctor. When you have a headache, you take medication. I want to encourage you to take care of your mental health, and because it matters. It matters so much. Mental well-being matters. Please take care of yourself. Let you be transformed from this webinar through Ya Africa, as well as the Z Zurich Foundation, and know that somebody out there cares. So reach out and get some help. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Back to you, Dr. Sonko.
Thank you so much for that amazing presentation, Ms. Tembi. I think you have shared a wealth of knowledge and expertise really on this call, and you have actually helped a lot of us and everyone listening to understand what mental well-being is about, and the difference with mental health, and what it means to when we talk about mental illness. I think one of the things that I wanted to say is that, you know, the purpose of this session is that we may leverage the knowledge that you have shared, but also a couple of stories that we're going to talk about now, so that we can hear from practical experiences what people have been dealing with, and then have a little bit of a discussion. So that's what we are going to do right now. I would like to introduce the other panelists that are going to be on the panel. We do have Miss Kate Otto. Kate is a psychologist at OLAG, extensive experience there as well, where she has been involved extensively in supporting learners and helping them to understand what is going on and to get help. So we will be engaging with Kate as we go through this discussion. You're welcome, Ms. Kate. Thank you so much for joining us. I would also love to introduce Ms. Akani, who is actually going to help us briefly tell us a little bit about the stories that we are going to discuss. And she will be talking about the 3 case studies that we're going to talk about. She is also with JA Africa and is involved in the Social Equity Project. She has a psychology background, exactly the kind of person that understands what we are talking about today and can share quite a bit. So I'm going to ask Akani to start off with our first case. And then after each case, we'll have a few questions for discussion. And I hope that this will help our listeners to, you know, kind of share those experiences. Again, like Ms. Tembi was encouraging you, please share on the chat. Also tell us where you're from, where are you tuning in from on the chat. That would be great. Thank you so much. Akani, over to you to tell us a little bit about those stories, just starting with the first one, and then we'll discuss a little bit and then move on to the next one. Thank you, Akani.
Thank you, Dr. Rita. A good afternoon, everyone. Am I audible enough?
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The first story is from an anonymous teacher from Uganda. And the story is on a teacher's impact on a teenage mother's mental well-being. Gulu, a town marked by the scars of a turbulent past, was the backdrop for a transformative experience during my training in the JA Social Equity Program. I found myself in the midst of teenage girls who had faced unimaginable challenges and yet displayed a resilience that defied belief. As a teacher in training, my encounters with these girls stirred a profound concern and admiration. One sunny afternoon during a lunch break, I crossed paths with a young mother who radiates an unusual air of contentment. Curiosity piqued. I approached her and inquired about the source of her happiness. She hesitated momentarily before replying. I'm just grateful to be able to eat with everyone else. Initially baffled by her response, I soon discovered that there was much more to her story than met the eye. Her life has been marked by maltreatment and neglect, inflicted primarily by her uncle. With tears welling in her eyes, she recounted the torment she endured, days of starvation and relentless mental abuse. She often helplessly watched as other girls indulged in meals while she suffered in silence. Years of deprivation had driven her to a desperate decision at the age of tender 17. She sought solace in a relationship with the first person who offered her the simple pleasure of a shared meal. Food had become her lifeline, and she was able to pay whatever price it demanded, even if it meant engaging in a relationship she wasn't prepared for. Tragically, her pursuit of sustenance resulted in an unplanned pregnancy, and the man who had provided fleeting relief disappeared without a trace. The weight of her circumstances were palpable, and I could sense the profound mental toll it took on her. Despite her previous fatigue, she continued to project an image of strength, fueled by her unwavering commitment to her child's well-being.
Wow, a
As
powerful.
a teacher, I recognized that her struggles went beyond the physical challenge. Her mental well-being was at stake, and it was crucial to address it. I began creating a safe and supportive space for her to share her experiences, emotions, and fears. Our conversations allowed her to release the pent-up frustrations and anxiety that had plagued her for so long. Together, we explored avenues to access support, including counseling services tailored to make unique needs. We reached out to local organizations that offered resources for teenage mothers, including mentorship programs and financial assistance for education. However, the most significant impact I had was community. Little did I know that the path I had chosen would lead me to confront the often overlooked issue of mental well-being in leadership. My role as a leader demanded that I wear multiple hats: a mentor, organizer,
Recording in progress.
Leading Hear My Story committee, whole lot of, and at the same time, they have 7 to 9 subjects. And they will struggle wanting to do more all the time. I want to say that resilience is built with that pressure. If it's managed well, if it's processed well, if the student is supported, creating the awareness with the student that you may carry 4 or 5 tasks, but also that will take a toll on your mental well-being. Making them aware might be the first step, but also educating them what that means, for them to also pick up their own signs that when I'm feeling this way, I'm overwhelmed. And as leaders, as one of them, it's important for us to take note that when you're not okay, it's okay to say, I'm not okay. I love what I saw in this story. Just to say, we teach our learners at our school through Kate's team that it's okay to say, I'm not okay and I'm overwhelmed. Please take away that load and that load. That shows signs and development towards resilience, because
and that I just needed to be strong. But as time passed, things got worse. It was a terrible time in my life. I went to see a psychiatrist, and this was the beginning of my journey to understanding and healing. I had to go to many therapy sessions and face the painful things bothering me. In the middle of all this, life threw another tough challenge at me. In 2022, the stress led to a miscarriage. It was very sad and it took a toll on me. But then something positive happened. I got a job as a teacher. It was a big opportunity for me, but it was also very hard. Being in a school with different kind of students made me anxious. I had to find ways to cope. I realized that it's okay to not pretend to be strong when you're not feeling well mentally. Some days are good and some are not, and that is okay. It's also okay to say no when you can't handle something, and it's okay not to have all the answers. I also learned that knowledge about mental well-being is low in my community. So I want to talk more about it and help people understand. It's important to break the silence and end the stigma around mental well-being. Thank you, Dr. Rita.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Akani. Another great story, and really, again, illustrating the situation, which is not really actually unusual. In fact, it's probably a common situation in the economy as we have it right now, that people are going to go through a whole lot of stresses. So in the interest of time, I'll ask Kate if you can respond to both my questions quickly, so we can have time to get on to the audience questions. What are the specific stressors or challenges that this individual is facing in their life, you know, as demonstrated by the story? Because I think you could unpack it a little bit. And then the second question, is it okay for teachers to show vulnerability in the face of a mental well-being issue, such as, you know, what she's talked about here? Over, Kate.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Sonka. So just in terms of the specific stresses, if we think about the experience that this individual was having, was this possibility of unemployment. So there was this kind of socioeconomic threat dangling over her. There were personal life circumstances that were going on. Obviously, she describes that she had a very tragic miscarriage going through all of these things. And so it was just this kind of layer upon layer. And sort of together with that was this episode of what seems like an episode of major depressive disorder. So those would be some of the things that were happening. But then there was the hope where she got that position as a teacher. It didn't solve everything though. So she described what she describes is she describes that when she got into the classroom and then she had all these children and all of a sudden she felt anxious and realized, oh dear, like now I'm how do I cope? And with that was that recognition that I don't have to always be okay. And the second part of the question then relating to, is it okay to show vulnerability? It absolutely is, but not to the detriment of the children in your class. So when they start to feel, so when the young people in our lives start to feel like they have to carry us, then it becomes then it becomes problematic. But generally speaking, for people to know, hey, you're not okay, but you're still showing up, like you're still here, that's a very, very profound reason for them to learn. Is that kind of role modeling? Like, there are mental health issues, these things are real, it helps to destigmatize stuff. And it really helps them to understand that I cannot be okay, but I can still show up. And that's a really important thing. It also then takes away some of this pressure where as a person who feels like you're leading a class, that feels like you have to show this perfection all of the time. I mean, that's not possible. But as I said, we just need to be careful that the students in our care don't end up starting to feel like I need to be responsible for you as an adult in my life now.
Thank you. Thank you so much for, that great response. I think that the story again just, helps us remember that teachers, just like everyone else, are dealing with a whole lot of issues themselves, at home, personally, at school, and everywhere. And you need to remember that as educators, anyone listening today. Remember that you yourself need help. It's not just your students, not just your children at home or the greater family. So you really need to get help. And I do understand that on the chat, there will be a link shared where you can actually do a self-assessment. So if that is shared, please try it as we go along. You can kind of check out how you're doing and get some guidance from that self-assessment too. So we're going to have a few questions. This is the opportunity now for the audience to ask any questions. And I'm looking on the chat to see if anything is asked. Any questions from the audience? Looking to see where the questions are being typed.
Dr. Sonko, I see on the Q&A as well, there's a few questions.
Yes.
If you can check there, thank you.
Yep. Right. Let's see. How can we reduce stress while working on a project that is stressful? A great question. How do you reduce stress when there's already stresses introduced on a day-to-day basis in your work environment? Go for it, any of you panelists.
Thank you. So I think one of the first things is to just again do some self-pacing. So to pace how you're managing the project. And then what might sound slightly counterintuitive is to sometimes stop. So to sometimes stop working on the project, put it down, walk away and go do something that is completely different, to give you a bit of a different kind of fresh space in your head, where you've just had the time to unwind and to shift away from it mentally, and then to come back to it. I think that's a really important thing. And earlier in her presentation, Thembi spoke about different ways to regulate and to keep feeling, just kind of looking after yourself. And those things included, she spoke about walking and about running and meditation and spiritual practice. And so as we're going through a stressful time, if we keep doing those types of things, we'll find that just helps to cap the stress a little bit and can ease it quite a lot for us.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that.
So I would say to Kate, what he and I always sing about, bring in help. Like you said as well, bring in help, tap other people to say, look, I need help here and there, because again, help, you can ask for help. That helps as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. Another quick question. Someone is very happy from Sierra Leone, very happy. Alpha is expressing interest and excitement about this discussion, but she's also asking how can they get services in Sierra Leone, West Africa, similar services for students in her country. I don't know who can answer this question. Maybe even Dr. Memuna could highlight some ideas here as well. So anyone who can share some insights on that. I think there is also another question from Alpha again. If such services are not available, especially in the part where she's from, she's saying they're not available. If such services will not be available, what options do they have looking at young people within the school situation who have psychological challenges, mental illnesses. What could you share, team Kate and Tembi? What could they do in that situation? What options do they have if they do not have a comprehensive mental health support program within the school? Over.
So I can answer that second part.
Okay, cool.
Tembi, do you want to take that second part?
I can take it, but you can add if you need to. I just want to
sure. Go ahead.
To feel that it saddens us that in this day and age, there are countries where there's no mental health care. Because as you need a doctor, you need a clinician, a therapist, and so on. Having said that, one of the things that are elevated in healing when you're struggling with mental illness is family. If somehow schools can get the parents, get the extended family to assist in working and supporting these young people to strengthen those relationships, the stronger the relationships in that young people's lives, the better chances of them surviving and shifting and coping. And unfortunately, because sometimes families are also dysfunctional, it becomes hard for young people to feel belonging, to feel cared for. They then seek relationships. And then you spoke about in the question where they get pregnant and so on and so on. So school should feel like a safe space. Sometimes within the school, Kate is what they facilitate is called stepping groups. It's creating smaller groups where girls feel, for any school, where they feel safe to talk, where they feel heard, where they feel supported. And sometimes they do games, not even talking about mental health. Those can help because in the absence of professional help, you need to do that. But certainly I would think that there's hospitals as well in your country where it feels it's a severe mental illness. You certainly need to assist a school, making sure that those young people get to hospitals and they get contained. We've seen a lot of suicidality in SA, but seeking out, like in medical health centers, that could help as well. It's unfortunate that we're sitting at that state in this day and age.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that guidance. A few more questions from Abigail Banda. Needs clarity on how substance abuse is a biological factor. Ms. Tembi, you talked about that in your presentation. Substance abuse and...
Yes. It is a biological factor. If there's parents that are drinking or a mother that is drinking during a pregnancy, it alters the functioning of the brain and the development of even the physical body. It gets hampered. So it becomes a biological factor because your system, your really physical body is not functioning at its best because things were done, or even drugs or whatever substances, when the baby was still a fetus. And that affected their development. So it becomes a huge, huge biological factor in that sense as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Another important question, actually Anthony's question, we've touched on it already, but he's highlighting the same issue of stress in the workplace. People are really not that concerned about you. You're worried about losing your job. And I think you've already highlighted some of the help that you can get. Seek help, make sure you get some support, even outside of that employment situation where you can get help from someone else to start managing your stress. I will go on to this extremely important question from someone, a young person who says, I'm a pregnant student, but I can't tell my parents since it will be a death contract. My goodness, I'm not willing to abort because it doesn't sit well with me. What should I do? Because baby's father isn't ready. Very, very important question. Over to you, Kate, our psychologist on the call. What can we do? What can we advise her to do?
Thank you.
Yeah.
I first want to say that it sounds like you're in an incredibly difficult situation where being honest and front and open about your current situation can have negative consequences. At the same time, not being open can also have negative consequences. And so it sounds like you're in this kind of space where it's really, really hard to know exactly what to do. Without knowing enough about the full context, the first thing I think that would be really, really important, and again, one of the things that people have been speaking about on this call today, is to reach out to services that are available. So to find somewhere safe where you can speak the full story, and engage in a really authentic and meaningful manner, so that you can arrive at the answer for what you need to do for yourself. I think that that's a really important thing, to have somebody say you should disclose or you shouldn't. I don't think that is super helpful right now. I think what you're needing to do is you're needing to engage in a path where you can really spend some time reflecting and thinking and being heard, and to work through some of those really challenging feelings that you will be sitting with at this point in time.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much for that great advice. And again, please absolutely reach out to someone you can speak to after this call. I'm pretty sure we can find more help for you after the call. So make sure you keep in touch with us. I'm sure the moderators of the webinar can actually help you as well to know how to reach out. So with that, we now need to get on to the audience poll. We have a few questions for you to just tell us how this worked for you. So this poll is happening, I think right now. We're going to be able to share a few questions with you just so that you can give us a sense of feedback. And it should come up on your screen. You can answer very quickly. And as you answer, we're actually going to see the results. So in a few minutes, we'll be able to share the results of how you feel about this webinar. The first question, I feel that I have enough information about mental well-being and mental health. So that's the first question. You just need to select one of those options over there. There's another question as well. So you can easily just go through those questions and give us a sense about your feelings and how this webinar might have helped. And it's extremely important feedback for us to be able to plan the next webinar, and so we can actually be able to provide more help, also address topics that are of interest. So thank you so much. We'll give you a minute to do that. Also in the chat, there is a self-assessment of mental well-being that we mentioned. You might also be able to click on that before we close, so you can do that after the webinar and reach out for help as needed. So that is also another thing we encourage you to do. So I think we'll take another minute just to allow you to finish this, and then we'll wrap up. Thank you so much. So I think we're gonna see our results for this in a short while. I'm sure most people are pretty much almost done. You need to scroll down. You will see the slide bar on the side, and you can scroll down, and you can give us a thumbs up if you have actually managed, or even those beautiful hearts. We love them. You can let us know if you've managed to complete this assessment for us. Thank you. You can just scroll down on the sidebar up to the end, and we'll be able to see what's happening there. Thank you so much. And of course, any other comments you have for us, please feel free to type them up in the chat. All right, a lot of people are completing, as we can see. It's really been awesome. And our panelists, Tembi and Kate, thank you so much for sharing such wealth of knowledge and experiences with us. And of course, the stories, the wonderful stories that we were told, and where we learned so much from. Thank you so much again for everyone that submitted those stories. And of course, for Akani, who read them out so nicely for us to be able to engage. So I think most people have finished this. We're gonna see the results on the screen before we close. I'm not so sure if it's coming up. Yep, okay, so we have some results here. The bulk of people, 56 plus 19, my quick math says that is 75%, right? Is that right? Yes, 75% of the people agree or strongly agree that this has been extremely helpful, the information. That's the first question. And that is very encouraging. Very quickly, the second one, again, more people again agree, and others also strongly agree. There's a little bit of disagreement. This is on the question of, I know where someone with concerns about mental health can get help in my community. So this is something that we need to really start addressing and seeing how we can help get people more information so they can know where to get help. Third question, asking about young people in my community are open to getting help to improve their mental well-being. There's a little bit of disagreement, a few people who are neutral. Those numbers tell us that about 30% of people are either disagreeing or a little bit neutral to that. A bit of agreement. We want more agreement to be there and more strongly agreeing people on this one. So as we go forward with more awareness, we would like to see many people saying young people are actually open. When young people are not open, it just shows that we have a long way to go in dispelling the myths and the stigma issues so that they can come out. This webinar has helped me to gain new knowledge about mental well-being. There is also a substantial lot of agreement. They strongly agree, 56%, another 13% agreeing. So that, again, a very good indicator that it's been helpful. There's some disagreement. We need to work harder to make sure we can convince you, provide more knowledge going forward. The last question, please indicate below actions or changes you plan to take in the next few weeks as a result of participating. I think 63% implement strategies for self-care. That's fantastic. 75% create a supportive environment for students. Mental well-being, that's fantastic. So a lot of people are getting away from here with action. Incorporate mental well-being practices and resources in my teaching practice. That's sitting at 38%. Perhaps we need to provide more support for you to be able to have those tools to incorporate in your practice. And then advocate for mental well-being awareness within my education institution. Again, 63%, that's fantastic. And then initiate open conversation and reduce stigma about mental health with colleagues and students, 44%. That's an area we need to work on so that more people can take those actions. There's a lot of interest, though, as I can see from this feedback. People are going away with action points, sharing insights and information from the webinar, 31%, explore resources and tools provided during the webinar, 19%. Thank you so much for this feedback. We really appreciate it. And looking forward to yet another webinar coming up in a few months. I'm sure we'll be organizing one, hopefully before the end of the year. But today is World Mental Health Day, and it's been really awesome hosting you all and the shared learning that we've all participated in. And I hope that it's given you a lot of tools to go away with and work with in your work and in your life. Thank you so much, everyone, and we'll leave it at that. Thank you. And thanks to our panelists again.
Thank you, Dr. Rita.
Thank you. Thanks to the great audience. You've been from many places. It's very exciting and looking forward again. But yeah, thank you and bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.